Alright guys, welcome back today. We have a natural resources video for you. We're going to do a sealed terrarium project. This is out of one of the natural resources books. It is should be an eligible project for a 4-H show. We got some materials here today. You should have most of these at home. If you don't, they should be easily attainable. We're going to start off with a 2-liter bottle. You want to make sure it's clear, plastic. If possible, leave the label on until we get to a step to take it off. You're going to need some kind of spray bottle. If you don't have one like this, you can get by without it, but you can also empty out an old hairspray squirt bottle, something like that. Just make sure you get them washed out good before you use them. We're going to need a garden trowel. If you guys don't have one of these, you can get by with a spoon. Make sure you ask a parent before you go stealing a spoon out of the drawer. A pair of scissors, a pocket knife, kitchen knife, something sharp to cut a bottle with. We're going to need some clear packing tape. Optional tool would be a pair of long tweezers. If you guys don't have one of these, they're awesome for lots of things, not just this project. We've got a piece of screen like you'd have on your front door. If you guys don't have any screen laying around, old screens, just take a plastic bag, punch a bunch of holes in it. It'll work just as good. We just want to make sure it's something that's not going to rot up in the soil when we put soil on top of it. And then as far as what's going in our terrarium, we got a big bowl of dirt here, black soil out of my garden. If at all possible, you want soil that's dug up out of your garden. You don't want potting soil. The soil in your garden is going to have a lot of microbes and microscopic animals, macroinvertebrates. It might even have a few worms in it, and those are good for our terrarium. When you get your soil, you want to make sure it's damp enough that if you pick it up and squeeze a handful, that it'll stay together. You don't want it crumbly. If it's too dry, spray some water on it, toss it over. Just keep doing that until it's damp enough to hold itself together. For the drainage in our terrarium, I'm going to use some of this 1/4 inch, 3/8 inch rock. Sometimes it's called peat gravel. If you don't have this, just look around your backyard, find some small rocks, enough to fill up the space we're going to use. And then we've got some plants and decorations. I went out back by the garden shed and I found some moss growing on the north side of the shed. You can usually get under this with your garden trowel and bring up a nice mat of it. Hopefully you guys can see it's a very healthy chunk of moss. It's grown real well. Walked around the yard, found a little clump of catnip growing next to the house, so we'll put that in there. And I also found some wild violets, some wild African violets, so we'll put those in and see how they do. And then as far as things that aren't going to grow, you can find sticks, you can find rocks. I've got a pine cone here, got a little chunk of quartz I found by the flower bed, anything like that, just to make it look a little more interesting. So we'll get these out of the way and we'll get started. The reason it's nice to have a bottle with the label still on it is that label makes a nice line right around the top here that we can cut around. If you can't use the knife, ask a parent to help, anything like that. I'm just going to poke in and I'm going to cut right around at the top of that label. It gives me a fairly straight line to cut around. Okay. I'm going to set the top to the side for now. We're not going to need that till later. I'm going to go ahead and take the label off. Put that to the side to go with the garbage. And there's the base for my terrarium. Now, I don't know if you guys will see this on video, but usually with these bottles, there's a line running right up here around these mold indentations. It's part of the manufacturing process. We're going to use that line to fill up our drainage layer. So I'm going to take my small rocks or pea gravel. I'm going to dump them in. Actually, I will take a Sharpie marker here and show you guys the line I'm filling up to. it down. Got a piece of plastic bag in there. Shake that around. Go a little bit more. Alright, that's our drainage layer. As the water soaks through our soil, it's going to drain down there and let it recirculate back up. Want to make sure this is wetted down good. You want enough water in there just till it's barely below the top layer of the gravel. Just like that. Should be able to shake it down level. See water around the edges, but not covering all the gravel. Next up, we're going to take our piece of screen. Again, you can use a plastic bag with holes punched in it. Take a pair of scissors or the knife. I'm going to cut it just a little bit bigger than the top of that bottle. We're going to put this screen in between the dirt and the rock, and what it does is it keeps the dirt from soaking down into the rock. About like that. I'm going to work that down in there. Make sure it's all the way covering the gravel. You don't want it off to one side. Something a little like that. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and get my soil, make sure it's good and damp. I'm going to start crumbling that in there. If you get a couple worms in there, that's perfectly fine. They'll be happy eating up all the goodies out of that soil. And I'm going to shoot for about 3 or 4 inches of soil in here. Speaking of worms, there's a little guy right now. He's going to go ahead and go in there, and he's going to be happy eating up all the goodies out of that soil. Alright, got my soil layer in. Now we're going to start with our plants and decorations. For you guys, it'll probably be easy. You got small hands to get in here. My hands are a little bit bigger, so planting some of this stuff's a pain sometimes. And that's why I've got my little spoon here. Be careful not to cut my worm up. I'm going to scoop some dirt out. So we'll start with some catnip, catmint on that side. I'll just push it down in there, like so. And I think we'll take the little African violets and put that right next to them. So I'll get over here on this side. Hopefully you guys can see down in there. Just going to scoot the dirt out of the way. Get my roots down into the dirt. Pack the dirt back in around it. Just like that. So now these plants are a little bit taller. So in front of them, I'm going to take some of my moss. And as you're working on this, make sure and keep your moss good and damp. You don't want that moss drying out. Once you dig it up off the ground, it does dry out a little bit. The moss is very forgiving. We'll just kind of take it and lay it in there up against our plants. And let it cover the ground. And now I can get my decorations in. I think I like this little piece of quartz to go right there. I really like this pine cone, but for this bottle it's just going to be a little bit too big. Might try to break a piece off. That's possible. Nope, doesn't look like that's possible. Oh, there we go. That's not too bad. Take and trim it up. We'll put that in there for some decoration. And then just a couple sticks. Make it look natural. Let that little guy fall down in there right between those plants. Alright, so we gotta look down in here. You guys can see I've got my African violets, my wild violets growing over there. I got a little bit of catnip here. And we got some rock and pine cone decorations and a few sticks. Alright. Now we want everything in here to stay good and damp. We want plenty of moisture in this bottle. So before I seal it up, I'm going to take my water sprayer. I'm just going to give everything a good spray. Let that grow. There we go. Alright, now to seal this up, we're just going to take our tape, we're going to line our bottle top pretty close to where we cut it off. Take our tape, attach it a couple places all the way around so it stays in place. Once we got it in place, we'll just take a long piece and we'll seal it all the way up. Alright, and there is our sealed terrarium. Now the cool thing about this, because it's sealed, we just made an ecosystem in a jar, so to speak. You don't need to water this every day. We sprayed all that moisture in there. It's going to self-water. As the water evaporates up off the plants and out of the soil, it's going to condense on the jar, run back down the edges, and water itself. It's self-watering. So it's not like a house plant where you have to make sure you water it every day or every other day. It kind of takes care of itself. We're going to want to put this in a sunny spot next to a south-facing window, hopefully, and then just sit back and check it every couple days and see how it's doing. If you end up with the plant dying, if you end up with the plant taken over, you can always cut the tape off, pull out the plant that's not any good, find something else, plug it in there, tape it back up, and see what it does. Other alternatives, if you can get your hands on a half-gallon or a 1-gallon pickle jar, they make an awesome sealed terrarium. A lot of times you can get online and find big decorative glass jars. As long as they've got a lid that'll seal up, they would work awesome. There's also lots of ideas online for doing the bigger sealed terrariums, so go ahead and take a look, see what you think. But this is a nice simple one you can do with a lot of materials you have at home and plants that are laying around your yard. Alright guys, have fun, stay safe, get outside and enjoy this beautiful weather.